So tonight we have only 3 candidates, so this will move along much more quickly. At this time, we drew numbers earlier as far as the order. We're going to begin our opening statements with Miguel. Candidates, you have 2 minutes for your opening statements. Our timers are right there in the front. They'll give you a warning when 1 minute's remaining, 30 seconds, and then I'll stop you. With that, Miguel, please begin.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being with us here today. Definitely want to thank the organizers, the INCO, for organizing this important forum just 3 weeks out of the election. My name is Miguel Lopez. I was born and raised in Oxnard and have grown with the city of Oxnard for the past 35 years. I graduated from Wainimi High and UC Santa Barbara. I graduated, and after graduating, I transitioned and worked with a Fortune 500 company before returning back to graduate school at UCLA and completed an executive education program at Harvard University, which was an emerging leaders program there, which have all prepared me for the many challenges that we have here as a city. I went on to serve at the highest levels of government in the White House, where I also experienced government dysfunction at the highest of levels, but also learned how to navigate a difficult landscape in the midst of a recession and still got important things done. No excuses. That prepared me for the most recent work that many of you may be familiar with, and that was my time as the Community Affairs Manager with the Oxnard Police Department, where I helped the department in the city during one of its most difficult times in its entire history. Our work would go on to be recognized not only by the state, but by the federal government. We did it by working with the community. We did it by being present and working hard to repair and strengthen relationships, creating partnerships, and developing open and honest lines of communication, no matter how difficult it was. It boils down to trust and respect. For us now, the question is, do you agree with what we've had the past 4 years? Who gives you confidence? Who gives you hope? Who has the experience and the track record of bringing people together, bringing stakeholders together to do the difficult job? I have a vision for a safer and stronger Oxnard. I am a product of a safer and stronger Oxnard. We need that more now than ever. I believe we can do better. I've said before that we must do better, and as mayor, I will do better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to ask the audience so that we can get as many questions in as possible. If you'll please hold your applause to the very end of the evening, I'll give you a chance then. But that way we can get through many more questions if you can hold your applause. And if you were going to boo me, please hold that to yourself too. With that, we'll go to our next candidate, 2 minutes, Tim Flynn.
Thank you very much. Tonight, I'd like to begin by thanking you for taking time to see and hear the candidates for mayor of the city of Oxnard. It says something about you, and in particular, you believing in Oxnard. My candidacy for mayor of the city of Oxnard is centered on public service. Serving the public, I believe, is the highest calling anyone can have, and my roots in the community, beginning with my family, are almost exclusively about helping people in every walk of life. I'm proud of my family's reputation of serving the public, and 2 people who taught me more about public service than any textbook were my mom and dad, and they're here in the audience here this evening. This election is about the future of Oxnard and its residents. If I'm fortunate to serve another term as your mayor, I intend on building on my accomplishments of establishing a model graffiti removal program, a $9 million investment in traffic mitigation, paving of the majority of Oxnard's residential streets, stabilizing the city's finances, and most importantly, wiping out corruption and returning honesty and integrity to City Hall. My goals in a new term are to finish the job of paving every remaining residential street that has not yet been paved, wiping out substandard housing, and attracting new economy jobs in high-tech, biotech, and medical research. I want to thank you for the opportunity here this evening, and thank you once again for believing in Oxnard.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Armando Sepulveda.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Armando Sepulveda, and I want to be your next mayor. I'm a lifelong resident here in the city of Oxnard. I graduated from Wanimi High School. I attended Cal Lutheran, where I attained my bachelor's degree in business administration. I have over 20 years of business and leadership experience working for Fortune 500 companies, such as PetSmart and Ross. During my tenure with PetSmart, I was part of a turnaround story, helping to grow the company from a little over 300 stores to an excess of 1,400 stores, taking a $3 per share stock up to $89 per share. As a city, we are at a turnaround point. We're at a point of stabilization, and in order to turn the city around, we need a strong leader that has real-world business experience to see the plan through and to execute. I want to work with the residents of Oxnard to help drive the change the city needs to move forward. The city doesn't need abstract ideas or more bureaucracy. It needs someone like me with the world experience who can take action and move the city forward. Somebody like me who did not seek endorsements or money from special interests and who is running a self-funded grassroots campaign, who will not owe any political favors. I'm one of the only candidates up here who did not receive any contributions from businesses or special interest groups. I'm here to represent the people. I'm here to represent your best interests, and that's what I'm about. So you have a big decision to make this November 8th. Are you going to stay with the status quo? Are you going to pursue those individuals who have to pay back favors? Or do you want someone to represent you, the community of Oxnard, who has your best interests in mind? And that's what I intend to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, please hold your applause. I know it's hard, but we'll get through faster. So a little bit about the process. We're going to do Q&A. I'll be jumping around. This first question will start with Tim Flynn. But the candidates were advised that they also have the opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal. At my discretion, we'll see how much of that goes, but I'm not sure how often they'll want to do that, but it is an option. We'll begin the first question with you, Tim. The River Ridge Golf Club has received loans and other benefits from the city. This facility benefits a very small segment of Oxnard residents while consuming large amounts of taxpayer monies, which could be used elsewhere. What is your plan to reduce and ideally eliminate the golf club's dependence on the city of Oxnard? You have 90 seconds.
It's a great question. I don't think there's anyone that's been more outspoken about the fact that the golf course contract is the only contract left from this bygone era that has never gone out to bid. That means it is a public contract to operate a public golf course, and the current operator of that contract was awarded and re-awarded that contract over and over again and did not have to bid for the contract. I've called for the early bidding process to start. There's about 2 3/4 years left on this contract. The city needs to understand what its position is through the bidding process, and only through that bidding process will the city really know whether or not the services that are provided by the current operator are the best price and, of course, for the best service. And I will end by saying that there should never, ever be a public contract that spans 25 years that does not go out to public bid.
Thank you. Armando, same question to you about the River Ridge Golf Club.
The issue with the River Ridge Golf Course, of course, we know is that it's a facility that not the entire community here in Oxnard utilizes. It's only a privileged few. And unfortunately, it has been a drain on our budgets. This is something that we all understand that has to change. One of the things that I would look at doing is initiating private-public partnerships. Let's get this bidded out. Let's get someone to take full responsibility over that golf course, whether it's they get naming rights over it, they have to, at the end of the day, it's about the city not having to pay any money. And the only way we can do that is to get it rebid, get those contracts redone, and ensure that we're not just giving out closed contracts anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Miguel, we'll wrap up with you.
I think that we really need to work with the contractor or whoever's managing the golf course, no matter who they are. We need to stop looking at the past and really offer solutions for the future. We have a tremendous opportunity, and I've said this time and again, not only with a golf course, but quite frankly, a lot of the different economic development opportunities here in the city. Who around the world does not know where Los Angeles, California is? Who around the world does not know where Santa Barbara, California is? Many people consider it the French Riviera of the West. Here we have an opportunity to market not only the city, but our bountiful resources that we have, including the golf course. Yes, I could understand why folks are frustrated in that, it really does serve a very small proportion of our population, as well as people from out of town. But we have a tremendous opportunity right here, not only to work with the folks who are managing the golf course presently, but whoever manages it next, as well as develop some strategic partnerships in the community with the Chamber of Commerce, the Oxnard ambassadors who recently hosted a golf tournament there. We have tremendous opportunity to market not only the golf course, but our many resources to really bring additional programming and tax revenue. We've seen what the city has been able to do with the Dallas Cowboys. The Rams are now happy to be here. Again, tremendous opportunity to really leverage our resources and attract other entities and organizations that will have to look at public-private partnerships. That's an area where I have experience. I mentioned to all of you my time in Washington, D.C. That's really where we have to be strategic and innovative, if you will, with how we're going to be able to move a difficult agenda forward, and it was through these public-private partnerships. I have the experience in doing that, and the experience at working at the federal level to work with not only our HUD, our Housing and Urban Development, but some of our other agencies and our representatives to bring some of this money home to Oxnard to help us so that it's not the taxpayers or our Measure O monies that will be able to do this. Let's look at strategic ways to fund it, including the private sector, the state and federal government.
Thank you, Miguel. Tim, let's stay on the issue of infrastructure. City maintenance. The city is in extreme need of repairs, such as sidewalks, tree trimming, alley cleanups, and especially the streets. What do you plan to do to address these issues, and where will the money come from? And if you could also talk about something very important to the INCO, the landscaping districts, and how can we provide better oversight and quality?
So there's nothing more important than streets. And I've led the council, in particular on the issue of streets, to take what the Public Works Department had recommended is a 10-year plan to pave every remaining residential street in the city and narrow that down to 3 years. So we borrowed $20 million of Measure O money. We pay that back to the Measure O fund at about $1.5 million a year. I think it's a 15-year loan. And so within a year and a half, every remaining neighborhood in the city should be paved. When I walk door to door and I listen to people and how they feel about the services that the city provides, one of the things that frustrates them the most are sidewalks and trees. And that is, I'm telling you, that's a monster, because if the city allowed it, half the residents of this city would ask that their tree be cut down, if the city allowed it. Because the trees are bothersome, they leak sap, there's raised sidewalks and everything else. I know as a fact that we're making great headway in repairing those sidewalks, and if any of you here have a sidewalk and you have a root that's uprooting that sidewalk, I'll be here after this meeting and give me your address, I'll get it taken care of.
Thank you. Next up is Miguel. Same question.
I think that we look at infrastructure throughout the city, and we've come to this point because of deferred maintenance and outright neglect. We need to look again at opportunities to work with our state and federal representatives to bring some of those monies here to Oxnard. It simply hasn't been done, and that is again a missed opportunity. We look at the budget again that was passed by the mayor and city council with the elimination of positions. One of those positions that was eliminated was the deputy city manager, who had absorbed, if you will, the legislative affairs portfolio for the city, working with our elected representatives, the county, the state, and the federal level. The money is there, folks, and we as Oxnard residents should not continuously have to bail out for the city for past neglect and deferment. We look at Measure O. It wasn't intended to be a rainy day fund. It was intended to enhance our services. I've heard from residents who are frustrated because they've been waiting for 8 months for their tree to be removed because it's becoming a public safety concern and a liability for the resident themselves. They've told me what would happen if, say a young kid on a skateboard was to trip and fall and then fall on the side of the property on their brick fence that they have there. Who would incur the liability? There is a lot that needs to be done, but we really need to work strategically to not put the burden, an additional burden, on residents and taxpayers, and look for opportunities for partnership from the state and the federal level to be able to fix our problems.
Thank you. Armando will wrap up with you on city maintenance and landscaping districts.
First off, with city maintenance, I think we've all talked a little bit about that. Measure O was intended to help with this, and so the money technically is there. We just have to be able to use those funds for what they were intended. Part of that is just making sure that we're truly prioritizing the streets that need the service. In many cases, we may be paving as a city certain streets that don't require it, and yet there are other roads that do. Channel Islands was a great example of that we saw recently. The other thing we have to look at doing too with landscape districts is how do we get that money back to those neighborhoods? The neighborhood should be able to control those funds and utilize them as they see fit based in their own community. Part of 218 was that it was the money that is taken in is supposed to be used within those communities and not used anywhere else. So one of the things we have to look at is how do we reappropriate those funds so that is it possible for them to go out and contract out the gardening service that needs to be done to get the tree maintenance that's done so that if the city's not able to provide it, then they should still have it based on the funds that they have available to them.
Okay, thank you. Miguel, we'll start with you. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and just ask for your philosophy. The mayor is obviously one of the most prominent positions in the city. What specific plans do you have to improve the situation for youth in Oxnard if you're elected? How can the city encourage the dreams and provide a solid foundation for our youth to build their lives and contribute to society?
Let me tell you all that when I returned to Oxnard 4 years ago, and this was after going to college in Santa Barbara, my graduate work at UCLA, and then the tremendous opportunity that I had to work in Washington, D.C. One of the first things that I did was go back to all the schools that I had attended. I went to Rose Avenue, I went to McKenna Elementary, I went to Frank Junior High, and I went to Wainimi High School, and I talked to the students there. I talked to them about their vision and their aspirations in this life. Of course, this was after me sharing some pictures of where my life's journey had taken me, including to the Vice President's house and even the White House for some work. And you should have just seen their eyes light up. I talked to them and told them about where I had gone to school, talked to them about the churches that I attended, and their eyes just lit up. It was then that I realized that we as a community were falling short of providing an environment and a community for them to develop their God-given talents, to have an opportunity at what they had shared to me were their dreams and aspirations in this life. I had themselves write them letters about what their goals were, with the intent of mailing it to them 2-3 years down the line, at critical transition points in their lives, so that they would realize if they were deviating from what their dreams were, that they could get a letter that they wrote to themselves 2 or 3 years ago. We need to do more to bring, I'll say, role models, heroes, speakers, not only to our community, but into our schools, so that these kids can once again dream of bigger dreams to reach higher and go further. I myself was a beneficiary of that, and we can certainly do it once again.
Thank you. Armando, same question to you.
Well, first off, let me share my story a little bit because people don't know much about me. First off, I'm the youngest of a family of 10. And my dad was a bracero who came over when he was 14 years old. And my summers were involved where I was picking strawberries in the summer instead of going on nice vacations with the family. And I did that because that was something that you did, and is what you did to help the family out. So I had an opportunity, unfortunately, where my dad and my mother had gotten ill, and I had to go back to Mexico with them for a year. So I missed the first semester of my freshman year, the second semester of my sophomore year. I came back, and I was able to make up all my credits and graduate on time with my class. I was able to go to a university, get my degree, and blessed enough to be able to work for Fortune 500 companies in high positions, making a good living. And I think that I'm an inspiration for those individuals, and that I can help guide them so that they can see that anything is obtainable. The U.S., this is a true country of dreams, and you can make it a reality, but it all depends on you and your personal drive and what you want to make of this.
Thank you. Tim, we'll wrap up with you on this question about how you can improve the situation for youth in Oxnard.
Well, if all kids were like Armando, we wouldn't even have this question, and we wouldn't have a need for this question. And at the root of this is education. And I've been an educator, high school teacher for 24 years, and there's nothing more that impacts a younger person's life than an education. And I think both Miguel and Armando are a testament to that. So what it really is about is more partnerships with the school district here in the city of school districts, plural, with the city of Oxnard to see how we can get kids on a track of success, both in terms of a job, and that's through linked learning, and also an academic track. And I think it begins and it almost ends with parental involvement. We have to find a way in this community to tie in parents who oftentimes are working, and they're working many jobs, tie in those parents to their kids' future, and I think education offers the best possibilities for them.
Thank you. Armando, we're going to start with you on the next question. Given the poor financial and management failures in the past here in the city, how will you restore trust and confidence of the people in the city? And what would you do to transform the culture within the city staff to be able to get rid of the past bad behaviors?
Well, first off, it all starts with the selection cycle. When you think about all of the candidates that are up here, some of us have taken money from special interests, some of us have taken different campaign contributions, and I have not. So when I think about how do I restore public trust in the office of the mayor and City Hall, it starts with the elections. It starts here. I did not seek endorsements. I don't owe favors, and I will not owe any favors. I'm here for the people, and that's what I'm here for, the community. So I made it a choice when I started. Second thing is transparency. We have to make sure that there is transparency in all levels of government so that all the residents know what is happening with your money, your taxpayer money. And that's the reality. We're concerned. It's difficult to reestablish trust within City Hall unless we have that transparency, and that's what I want to do. So I'm here to serve you, the community, and that's why I made it a choice to ensure that I did not get any endorsements, I did not take any money. Everything is self-financed with the only purpose of serving you in your best interests.
Thank you. Tim, same question to you. What would you do to restore trust and confidence in the city? And what would you do to transform the employee culture within the city?
So I was elected mayor based on the misdeeds of my predecessors. I mean, it was 6 years ago that the DA investigation happened, and 4 years ago I was elected mayor of the city of Oxnard because of where I stood in my first term as a member of the city council, fighting what I thought was illegal, unethical, and inconsistent with public service. So I have a track record of restoring trust and honesty, and that starts first and foremost with self. I think, where Armando and I have a tremendous amount in common, it's about where you get the money. I don't accept special interest money. I get contributions from individuals because I don't want to owe anyone anything. I don't want to owe union something. I don't want to owe a developer something. So I'm not taking that money, and Armando knows that I don't take that money, and I will not take that money. And that's what got Oxnard in trouble in the past, is that these special interests compromised public leaders.
Thank you. And Miguel, we'll wrap up with you.
I think that you have to look at the organization and realize that our organization and our departments are not only stretched, they are also stressed. I mentioned how we have over 150 vacancies throughout the city and the 6,000 hours per week of less services that we have. We need to recalibrate and we need to reset. I think that we need to really look at going to a back to the basics approach to recalibrate what it is that we can do. As a city employee, I'll tell you that we have gotten past the point of doing more with less. It's to the point of having to do less with less. And I think that the city council and the mayor has to make those critical decisions to where we need to make these difficult cuts. They made cuts to public safety, and we've seen an increase of 67% in crime in the last 4 years. I'm hopeful that we are seeing that turn with a 3% decrease that we've seen at the start of this year, but we need to go back to the basics and to what has worked for us. I appreciate the support that I've received from folks far and wide. Not only city employees who are dedicated to the betterment of our city to once again make it a thriving, prosperous city, but from folks, hardworking people and organizations that want and need and feel that we need that change. I'll tell you that in terms of changing the culture and morale, I mentioned that I last was recognized as the Employee of the Year in February. I understand that now that Employee Appreciation Program has been eliminated. It doesn't take much to appreciate your staff, and that's where it's all going to start again, with appreciation for each other.
Okay, Miguel. All right, Miguel, we'll start with you on the next question. Since we're talking about City Hall, let's hear your thoughts about the current city manager. Many in the community support the city manager. Others complain about the work he's doing and some of the changes. So please share with us your view of the city manager. Would you support him when his contract comes up?
I think that the City Council extended his contract a couple months ago, 11 months before his contract was up, and when it already had a one-year rollover clause. We talk about the challenges that the city has, and quite frankly, I do not understand why that needed to happen then. I really look at our two council members who sit on the Fiscal Policy Task Force with Council Member Perillo and Brian McDonald, who dissented on that vote, not only on his extension, but also on the budget. Them two, I think, are the most informed of council members who understand not only the severe stress our organization is in, but also the financial constraints of it. I think Greg Nyhoff walked into a very difficult situation when he came here from Modesto. When you look at recognizing the strongest asset of any organization and team, it is your employee and your members. And when city employees first recognized that the budget was balanced with a $4 million in concessions from a staff report that was being brought to council, that did nothing to empower or create that supportive environment and culture within City Hall. So, I think he's done, I'll say an adequate job with a difficult job that he walked into, but he, quite frankly, given how we were in this extended period of crisis, he has not had the support that he's needed or that anybody would have needed to be able to move forward. He should have spent some time, I think, really reaching out, identifying allies and partners, and then moved on an agenda 6 months after arriving.
Tim, same question to you. What's your views on the city manager?
Well, my views on the city manager are well known. Greg Nyhoff is far from perfect, but he's the best city manager this city has had, arguably, ever. And he has, in 2 years, transformed this city unlike no other person before him. And when the question is asked about changing the city culture, and it's been mentioned that there's a high vacancy rate, one of the reasons there's a high vacancy rate is because people are retiring faster than they can be replaced. And part of it is that culture change. People saying near the end of their career, I don't want to have anything to do with this. I've had 25 years or 30 years of service to the city, and I just don't want to be a part of it. So we're moving forward, and we're moving forward with the most highly competent city manager that any city could ever have.
Thank you. Armando, same question.
First off, we can all agree that he did walk into a very difficult situation. And let me say that working for different corporations and Fortune 500 companies, one of the things that I've learned is that you have to make difficult decisions in tough situations in order to keep a company from going under. And I'm comparing the city to a company because he had to basically do the same thing. I will say that a lot of his strategic priorities are on the mark. When I look at the strategic plan that the city has put together, it makes a lot of sense. It's a plan that requires strong leadership in order for it to be executed, and that's one of the reasons why I feel that I'm the better candidate up here, because of my business experience, and I'm used to executing those type of plans. I will say that a lot of people disagree with the amount of money that he earns, and in many cases, it's the salary that really prevents individuals from seeing the tough job that he has to deal with. Do I personally agree with that salary? Not necessarily, but I do agree that it is a tough position and that he has to make those tough decisions. So would I support him? I will.
And Miguel, did you want to rebuttal?
I did. I actually just wanted to say that, folks are retiring, but not because they're of retirement age. It's quite frankly the culture and their sheer frustration. My mom is a perfect example of this. She just retired this past April after 30 years of service to the people of Oxnard, and as well as many of my other friends who have retired. They look at how they're being treated, they look at the climate and they acknowledge that it's been, peaks and valleys, highs and lows through the past, couple decades, but never as bad as we have now. We need to recognize that our strongest asset are our residents and our employees, and move forward supporting them to move our city forward.
Thank you. Either of you? No? Okay, we'll move on. Armando, we'll start with a little bit of the beach again. What's your position on the Puente Power Project by NRG to build another power plant? If you oppose it, how do you think this city can stop it?
First off, I do oppose it. It doesn't make sense for us to have another power plant on our coastline. The fact that we already have a couple of power plants is already enough, but also the fact that this particular power plant would be what we could call a peaker plant, meaning that it only gets turned on certain times of the year, and it does not actually benefit the residents of Oxnard. So a plant that doesn't necessarily need to be on the coastline based on the new technology should be placed anywhere else. And it should go to those communities that require that energy. So if it goes up to Simi Valley, Thousand Oaks, etc., why isn't it up in their city limits? Why does it have to be on our coastline? Our coastline needs to remain pristine. Our coastline needs to be maintained for our community, for our current generations and our future generations to come. So I do oppose it. Oxnard should not be considered a third-class or second-class community that has to have an energy plant for those individuals that are going to benefit where we do not benefit. So as a community, we have to stay united and stay against this power plant.
Thank you. Miguel, what's your position on the Puente Power Project?
I also oppose it, although it begins to turn the page and look at, a cleaner form of energy. It doesn't go far enough. We do need to begin to transition from fossil fuels to other alternatives and renewable sources of energy. These are the jobs of the future. How can we stop it? We've seen people model how they've been able to slow it down with organizations like CAUSE and community leaders who are coming out, organizing our community. How are we going to stop it? It's going to take our community. They've been able to slow it down, but we need to be more forceful and more direct that we do not want this on our pristine coastline obstructing our public access and one of our more, I'll say, beautiful resources, our coastline. I mentioned this is really looking at it as a jobs opportunity, looking at it as economic development. Let's look at alternative sources of energy, which are the future. We'll be able to partner with our state of California. We'll be able to partner with the federal government to really bring these high-paying jobs that the mayor talked about earlier and bring them here to Oxnard. We can partner, again, with our colleges and universities, with UC Santa Barbara, one of the best engineering programs, who focuses on energy in Santa Barbara, as well as UCLA. Let's create that strategic opportunity with a vision for our energy future and empower our residents and our youth to aspire for these high-paying jobs that will allow them to live at the beach.
Thank you. And Tim, we'll wrap up with you. What's your position on the project?
Well, I've led a city council that has unanimously opposed all the power plants being located on the beach. And even though council members have individual reasons for opposing the power plants on the beach, my position is that outside of people, because people, the residents and the people of Oxnard are our most valuable asset. But our second most important and valuable asset is the coastline. There's no coastline like it. And it's why we're here. Why would anybody place an industrial eyesore on a beach, on the coastline? It is absolutely incomprehensible to me why anybody would do that. And so we have two large, over a half-century-old power plants at Mandalay Shores, or Mandalay Beach, and at Ormond Beach. We need to get rid of those plants. Those plants are obsolete. They look like something from the Soviet Union. We need to get rid of them as quickly as we possibly can.
Thank you. Tim, we'll start with you on the next question. Let's stay near the beach. Although the county manages the harbor, there's a lot the city could do. What's your vision of reviving the harbor?
So as some of you might know, I started a task force 2 years ago with Councilman Bert Perillo. It's called the Channel Islands Harbor Task Force. And the main goal and objective of this task force is to get a seat at the table for the residents of the city of Oxnard. All of Channel Islands Harbor is in the city of Oxnard. All of it. Yet the people of Oxnard have no say about the future of the harbor. Well, we now have a seat at the table, and that begins with the Fisherman's Wharf project. You, the members of this audience, and the people that are watching here this evening, for the first time, arguably, in the some 50-year history between the county and the city, we have a seat at the table. We are going to have a fundamental impact on what happens on that corner at Channel Islands Boulevard and Victoria. And along with Councilman Bert Perello, we've been leading that effort here in the city of Oxnard.
Thank you. Armando, same question to you. What would you do to revive the harbor?
I think first off, we have to make sure that we're able to work with the county and the harbor districts to make sure that we're able to propose a mixed-use development that will benefit the city and the county residents. We have to be able to revitalize it. Let's bring the nightlife back. The harbor area is a beautiful, beautiful area. If we look at Ventura, we look at different harbors, Long Beach, etc., Santa Barbara. I mean, this should be a place where everybody comes. If the community uses it, tourism will follow, and all of that's going to bring additional tax revenue. In order to do that, though, we have to work with these different organizations to make sure that they give us that seat at the table, that they give us the input that we need to provide so that we are part of that development. You know, our opinions need to matter because at the end of the day, it's for our future generations.
Thank you. Miguel, what's your position on how to revive the harbor?
You know, it's all about relationships and communication, and that's one of the areas that I have focused and thrived in my adult life with community outreach and public engagement. I'll tell you that we do have to work more aligned and closely with the county as well as the Harbor District and the residents and organizations that have formed. A couple weeks ago, we were all at the SECA Forum, the Channel Islands Community Association, and this was one of the points that we discussed. We recognize and remember what Fisherman's Wharf used to be. It used to be a day trip destination, a weekend trip destination. It used to be jobs. It used to be great food, and it used to be shopping and recreation. It needs to be that once again, and it can be. But it's not going to happen without having those open lines of communication, as difficult as they may be, and about those relationships. We've looked at the plans that have been proposed, and we really need the public's input. We've seen a proposal of nearly 400 apartments that are proposed for that area. That is going to limit our waterfront access and our recreation space. As a city, is that something that we support, or are there other opportunities? Again, looking at many of the waterfront communities that we have, not only up and down the West Coast, but even the East Coast. It is a tremendous opportunity, not only for business, but for tourism, so that people can come, whether it's for a day, a weekend, maybe stay in one of these short-term weekend rentals and leave their money here so that we can then invest that money in these critical services that we need throughout the city. Tremendous potential.
Thank you. Miguel, we're going to start with you on the next question. And tell us what you think about alcohol permits in Oxnard. Do you believe there are too many alcohol permits? What changes or conditions would you impose?
You know, I certainly do think there are too many, especially in underserved and under-resourced neighborhoods. You know, this has been a point that has been brought up at the city council debates and forums, where there are particular parts of town where there is an abundance of, I'll say, permits available, and it's not difficult to come across, alcohol, feet away, if not, I'll say, several businesses within a block radius. We really need to do a study on this and see how it's affecting the quality of life. Is it affecting traffic? Is it affecting accidents? Is it affecting, other areas of life for families? But it really needs to be more distributed and controlled a little bit more than what it is now, because it does have a profound effect on the quality of life, not only of us now, but also of that next generation. When they're driving, by a certain part of town, and you cannot go 100 feet without running into several outlets that sell alcohol, that is problematic. You know, we really need to change the culture of our community to one that really promotes, I'll say, pro-social activity in life, and really be more, I'll say, optimistic about the community that we want to provide, not only for our youth, but for our families, not only now, but in the future.
Thank you. Armando, you're next. What's your position on the alcohol permits? What changes would you establish?
Well, first off, let me just say that I don't know enough about what the regulation is around the alcohol permits to really give a well-educated opinion on this matter. And I would hate to just ramble on and say things that don't make sense. So let me just say that this is something I would have to look into to get an educated opinion so that I can give some feedback on it. I'm not sure what the regulation requires, the distance from schools, etc., how many alcohol licenses or permits can be given per the population density, etc. So I would have to look into that.
Thank you. Tim, same question to you.
Well, every city regulates where and how alcohol can be sold, and Oxnard has had for many years the service of Cliff Weir, who has done a really good job vetting these issues. But as some of you might have seen in the past 6 months, we had an incident where the Sikh community had a market. They had a Sikh market, and they offered products from India in this market. And in the end, it was decided by the city council that a compromise was attempted to be reached to allow them only to sell their products because it was an ethnic food market. And in the end, that wasn't supported. And as a result of it, that Sikh market closed. This is off of, I believe, 2nd Street and Ventura Road. So we are going to take a look at this, a closer look at this from a policy perspective, and we really need to get a hold of the issue of density. We need to take a better look at areas in and around schools so that alcohol is not sold near a school or too close to a school. And I believe that it's a balance. It's something that there's a demand for it, but at times having an area overly saturated with alcohol outlets can have very adverse effects on the community.
Miguel?
I certainly think it is a balance, but we have to look at how right now it is really affecting certain neighborhoods, primarily in South Oxnard and East. We look at, the mayor mentions how council took action to not approve the business for the Indian community here by 2nd and Ventura Road. Yet in the last 6 months, or in the past year certainly, we look at right there at the corner of Rose Avenue at Del Sol Park, the new development there, and one of the requirements that the developer wanted was the liquor license, which was a concern to the residents there as well as the people at the park at Del Sol Park.
Sorry. All right. No others? Then we'll go on to infrastructure. Tim, you're up first. We talked about this earlier, but it's obviously a very important question to many of the people in the community. So regarding infrastructure, do you have any creative financing concepts to help remedy the immediate repair needs of things like the water, the refuse, the street systems? How would you bolster the long-term preventative maintenance funding?
Well, let's talk about just a record of accomplishment. For many, many years, the Del Norte recycling facility, where all the trash gets hauled, sorted, and then recyclables then are sold on the market, and then the rest of the trash is dumped at 2 different dumps, one in Simi and one in Santa Paula. That facility was run for the life of its contract. This is another one of those rigged contract deals where one man was allowed to escape town with a $25 million profit. He sold a public contract and he walked out of town with $25 million. I ended that and I led the council on that with the city of Oxnard taking back its own facility. And since we've taken back that facility, where the operating costs were $6 million a year, it is now costing the ratepayer $4 million a year. So we're saving $2 million by a public entity, by the city of Oxnard, having taken back its own facility, and every one of those workers gets benefits. This is including the benefits to the workers, which they weren't getting before under the private contractor, better working conditions, and I think, David, is a case study of how more effectively to manage utilities. But in a broader sense, you can't escape the fact, as I mentioned earlier, if a new wastewater facility 15 to 20 years from now is going to cost $1 billion, it is investing in water infrastructure like we have today, and we lead the state of California.
Thank you. Miguel, same question to you. What creative financing concepts do you have to solve the immediate repairs, and what will you do about the long-term preventative maintenance needs?
Not sure if folks remember this, but when the mayor and council voted to approve all 3 of our utilities in its first reading, a couple weeks after that, there was an article on the BC Star recognizing how there was 5 cities as well as districts throughout the state of California that had been given multi-million-dollar grants from the state of California. The state hasn't always had money like we have now, but right now are investing in infrastructure because we've seen what our old crumbling infrastructure is doing as a threat to public safety and public health. We look at the Del Norte plant that the mayor talked about. I think what he fails to recognize is that now, we have inherited the maintenance of that facility. What we should have done was submit a public option with the city being one of the bidders for the city that quite frankly would have maybe brought down I'll say the other bids from the private sector to be more competitive. But we look at some of our crumbling infrastructure, and it's been deferred maintenance and neglect that has brought us to this point. We need to do better to plan for the future for that next generation. In terms of some creative ways to fund these projects, we have a congresswoman with Congresswoman Brownlee who also sits on the infrastructure committee. We've seen all the money that she's been able to bring by sitting on the Veterans Committee. We need to leverage our resources, and like I've said time and again tonight, work with the state and work with our federal government to bring some of these available resources and monies to Oxnard so that Oxnard does not have to bail us out once again.
Armando, we'll wrap up this question with you. What's your thoughts about infrastructure? Do you have any creative financing ideas? What will you do about long-term preventative maintenance needs?
Well, I agree that this is an issue that we have to seriously consider. First off, we have to look at, are we able to get any state or federal grants? I think that's a great option. If there's free money out there, why not try to get it? But the reality is that it's very difficult to be creative when it comes to these infrastructure opportunities. We know that they are crumbling, they are in need of repair. Unfortunately, one of the only ways that we can really do it is by getting that rate increase and ensuring that we're able to use that money to work towards the maintenance of those facilities. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the cost or the analysis that was made. We have to revisit that and see if there's a way to maintain the infrastructure going with a lower bid or get rebids out there so that we can still function and operate and maintain the facilities. The other thing that I would also look at is, how do we harness these partnerships? Can we cut costs and can we do cost controls? So we have to look at our internal operation first before we start going out and trying to do external things. I don't think creativity in many cases is going to drive the results.
David, if you don't mind, just a quick response. And I want to add to what Armando and Miguel have said. East Bay Mud Municipal Utilities District is an excellent example about what this city should have and should continue to take a look at, which is really combining the resources of, let's take all 10 cities in Ventura County. Before we ever invest $1 billion in a new wastewater facility, we should have half the cities in the county, if not everyone in the county, partnering with us before we make that capital investment. And that goes with the MRF, with the trash facilities. We do take other cities' trash, which lowers our costs.
Need to stop you there. Thank you, Tim. And Armando, we'll start with you on the next question. Armando, if you're elected, what would be some of your top goals and how will you accomplish those?
Perfect, thank you. If I'm elected, first thing I'm looking at is business and economic development. Ensuring that we're able to attract the businesses with those high-paying jobs that we need here in our community, but more importantly, focusing also on our small business owners here to help them continue to grow and make their permitting processes easier. The other thing I'm looking at is infrastructure. How do we continue to work and get that Measure O money back where it needs to be, get our streets back in order, and then we're looking at public safety. Public safety to me is not about adding more police officers on the streets because we don't have the budget, and we have to be very realistic with that. We already spend a high percentage of our general fund into law enforcement and firefighters, and we don't have the money, so how do we do it? We have to look at the community policing programs. We have to go out to other cities that are doing a great job driving down crime and see how are they doing it and get those best practices back here. The other thing that I look at is, how do we continue to drive our community forward with reinvestment in our community, into our parks, so that we can utilize them.
Thank you. Tim, same question to you. If you're elected, what would be some of your main goals and how would you accomplish those?
Well, everyone knows that it's not just Oxnard. Every community places public safety as its #1 priority. And that's reflected in the budgets, the percentage of money that every community spends on public safety. And in fact, I'm proud to say that there's no city in Ventura County, there are 10 cities in Ventura County, that spends more as a percentage of its budget. I'm not talking about the total dollars. I'm talking about there's no city that spends more as a percentage of its budget higher than the city of Oxnard. We spend 66% of our general fund budget, 66% on public safety. And so public safety is that #1 priority. Number 2, Armando hit the nail on the head. It's about economic development. The world turns by making money. And the city, if it's going to get more revenue, has to attract new job growth. That means higher disposable incomes. That means property values will rise. And we need to be very focused on how we're going to attract those new jobs to the city. And finally, it's getting every single street paved in the next 2 years. Residential street. Thank you.
Okay, Miguel, same question to you. If you're elected, what are some of your main priorities and how will you get them done?
We've had this question asked of the three of us at every forum and debate, and it's funny that we all have the same answer. We just vary in terms of which one we would put first, second, and third. Certainly public safety. I mentioned how in 2011 we were one of the safest mid-sized cities in the entire U.S. The mayor mentions that we do spend more as a percentage of our budget, but we actually spend the worst when we look at per capita. We are the largest city in the county. It is a 24-hour-a-day service that the city provides. No other department in the city has a full staff operating 24 hours a day, because at the end of the day, when we have an emergency, who do we want to show up? Our first responders, our police, and our fire. So public safety, #1, to really turn the corner on the increase of crime that we've seen in the last 4 years of 67%. And that is not spending more, it's spending smarter. I mentioned that crime prevention is cheapest, intervention is next, and enforcement is last, being the most expensive. Right now, we are spending more because we are strictly on enforcement. #2, economic development. The mayor mentioned that it's one of the 4 strategic priorities of the city, yet he has only 1 full-time person to carry that important function. We need to do better. We need to work in partnership with the Oxnard Chamber of Commerce and EDCO to not only support the businesses that we have so that they don't close and leave, but to also attract these new businesses, which are jobs. They are jobs and it is tax revenue. And third and final, infrastructure. And what I say is also restoring trust, leadership, and vision to the office of the mayor and to our city once again.
Thank you. We're now going to begin our closing statements. We're going to do it in the reverse order that we did earlier. So we'll begin with Armando. As a reminder, you have 2 minutes. The timers will give you a warning at 1 minute and 30 seconds. With that, Armando Sepulveda.
Great, thank you very much. So first off, thank you all for coming out tonight and for listening to us. I want to leave you with the following. You have a choice this November. Do you stay with the status quo, or do you select someone with no business or leadership experience? Or do you select a candidate with over 20 years of business and leadership experience in driving revenue, managing large budgets, and who has not accepted any campaign contributions or any special interests? You get a candidate who is not going to owe any favors to any company or any individuals, whose #1 interest is you, the residents of Oxnard. Because I want to work for you. As the mayor, that's my job, is to make sure that the services that you pay for are being provided for you. I look at this as an interview. This is what this is. You're judging us by our character, hopefully our moral fiber of who we are and what we're here to do. And there are no special interests attached to me. I only have one interest, and that is you in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Tim Flynn.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say to Armando that prior to entering teaching 24 years ago, I was in sales and marketing for 6 years, so I do have private sector experience. And I've actually, from that private sector experience, and the public sector experience, it's really added, I think, to the types of partnerships that both Miguel and Armando are talking about. You know, when I was elected to the City Council in 2004, graffiti was a #1 priority in my campaign. And I teamed up with my predecessor, and we made graffiti a crime in the city of Oxnard. I mean, a true crime that we would prosecute and that we would prioritize as a quality of life measure. And today we have one of the best graffiti removal programs anywhere in the state of California. In 2008, I launched the Oxnard Traffic Initiative, and although that initiative was not successful, it resulted in a $9 million investment in an intelligent traffic system that we're now just one software program. All the hardware has been installed, one software program from installing. And finally, I have a record of accomplishment. You understand that honesty and integrity begins with self. And when you look, ladies and gentlemen, at what I've done since 2004 till now, nothing else but honesty and integrity can come forward. Thank you very much. I ask you for your vote, and thank you for believing in Oxnard.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Miguel Lopez.
Friends, as I have shared, I bring a unique perspective, personal and professional experience, and the leadership record to help Oxnard navigate our present challenges, and they are many. Mr. Flynn, you cannot govern without trust, you cannot lead without trust, and you cannot manage without trust. Mr. Sepulveda, public service is not easy, trust me. I've done the difficult work in our community and in the trenches, and I think you would make a great partner to our economic development director, but not for mayor. I have had the opportunity to work and serve at the local, state, and federal level. I have shown that I get things done. I helped our community heal after a very difficult moment in our history. People in every corner of our city not only saw my work or our accomplishments, but more importantly took notice of how I worked, how I was able to bring different people, groups, organizations, and stakeholders together to help build a safer and stronger Oxnard, and we still have work to do. We are 3 weeks out from this election that will determine Oxnard's fate and future. And I am a product of a safer and stronger Oxnard. Our kids now and our families deserve the same. We have seen where the past 4 years have brought us, to our knees, and it was not necessary. Some argue that it was for political gain or for this election. We can do better. As I said earlier, we must do better, and as your mayor, I will do better. As I have maintained throughout this election, the hardworking people and all of you here with us tonight and those watching at home deserve better. I ask for your support, I ask for your vote of confidence, and I ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you so much.
How about a round of applause for these two? And please pick up one of these flyers out front, Espanol and English.